Hello, and welcome. It's good to be back with you again. I always look forward to anything that I'm recording for Patreon for friends of mine, those that I know that are just always close in my thoughts and in my life, through past experiences and friendships and whatever. I look forward to this time with you. What they had offered, and it's always a council of wisdom bringing things to us for this small group, is discovering which dimension you live on. And they're explaining the characteristics of the 7 sacred planes of existence, as they call them. They would prefer to call them planes, I guess because it's more easily defined in our minds than a dimension is, which seems to be more of an overlap through the veils type of thing. And they're stating that there's some pretty specific delineations. So I'd like to just go through these slides with you and explain what they had explained to me. So let's get started. Not all dimensions are beautiful and light. And I know that we know that within our own minds, and we try to visualize what things are like and what's above and what's below. And we're in the 3rd dimension, so we're kind of in between, and we don't really have a clear mental image of what that is. People depict things such as this lovely one with this angel and the orbs and that type of thing floating around, and we can see and visualize faces up in the clouds there, or in those frequencies and those energy fields. And trying to understand that with our finite minds is difficult. But what they really wanted us to understand and pay close attention to is that we can move into the higher dimensions and expect to see wonder and beauty and love and light there. But what we have to understand is what is beneath us is having a detrimental effect on us. It's also not as if it's a surprise that we have been living in a world where it just seems like what we've been anticipating as God's will, or the predestination, or the last days, as some would call it, if that's even what this is. I think we're in a really strong transitional phase. But the only thing that's going to shake us out of our slumber is to have us see things that are so blatantly dark and so blatantly against the nature of God and the nature of the enlightened man, is that we're going to have to see things, such apostasies that we're seeing in Ukraine. And on the 1st and the 2nd level, there's a tremendous amount of darkness and madness, and it is surfacing. The 1st and 2nd plane, as they described them, they said the frequency of the 1st dimension, it is felt but not heard, seen but ignored, because it is too volatile to be exposed. It is also too volatile for us to be able to do anything about it. It isn't as if we have a choice how we can control our planet. 1st dimension is physical or energetic, in a state of trauma in the tectonic plates and the ocean's floor. Middle Earth is having contractions. And when those contractions are magnified, the intensity will cause disruptions, volcanic, tornadic, and seismic, as we've already been experiencing. We have always had natural disasters because the energy must be expelled that is created within the contractions in the interior of our planet. It's like the planet breathing out, exhaling, blowing out that huge force of energy that has to be there in order to keep the planet intact and to release its process. It breathes like we do. Our planet breathes in the 1st grid that we have around us, this in and out life mode that it contains. There's a different grid around that spins, in a higher one that's recently created that vibrates around our planet, that is bringing in these tremendous different shifts. The awareness and pulling us outward toward attracting us to that beautiful vibration. At the same time, many things are happening in the dimensions below us. The 2nd dimension, it consists of shapes, lights, orbs, talons in the earth. All are representative of the dark side. It is the baser essence of the 3D, or those who have digressed to hatred, violence, animosity, anger, and disorder in an otherwise supposed to be ordered system. As we rise up, we're pushing them down because the contrast between light and dark is becoming so apparent that the only thing that can happen is a forced division. So as we're rising, we are forcing them down. which accounts for a lot of the madness in our world. It's just the way that it works. The two cannot coexist unless we have the laws of polarity in our planet. And it's one of the things that we are striving in our transitional process to rid ourselves of that and to have more of a unified belief system, or more of a unified structure. Hopefully more light than dark. The third dimension that we live in is only just a little bit higher than the second and the first. Now the complacent and the uninformed who wander in disillusionment and apathy in that area, they have no direction, so they just sit and they're basically useless within regard to the pursuit of a higher reality that we are striving for. They're okay with where they're at. They're fine with where they're sitting. They're content with what they're seeing. They're content with who they are and whatever degree of spiritual growth they have attained. Those are the ones that we really need to attempt to awaken in the context that if they aren't making a contribution to the growth of the universe, at least making a greater contribution, not in complacency, but in their own growth. There's a comfort zone ahead, and as we look at it, the comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing new ever grows there. That's a quote by Anonymous. I don't know who said that. But to find out the comfort zone, sometimes you kick back on the sofa and you watch movies, and you don't think about life around you. And you settle into the solitariness and the seclusion and the security of your home, or the security of your own well-being and knowing who you are. But complacency can be, in total complacency, the mark of a wasted life. The I have arrived attitude is so pervasive that we must witness great chaos and upheaval before we can be forcibly moved to fight for change. Unless it gets so ugly as we're seeing in Russia and Ukraine and throughout the world, the wars that we have ignored until recently because the threat of Third World War is looming large, and also that it is white Christians that are suffering at this point, so we're paying more attention. But the complacency is forcing us to have to take a look at what we could do, what we should be doing to protect the self. Where is our universe moving? How is it shifting? What is happening as that chasm grows between the shift in light and dark? And how much more so do we shift up? Do we force, literally, because that's the way it works in the law of polarity, the greater the light, the greater the darkness. So what they say, that given that life is too short to waste, find contentment in doing more, and thus simply being more, being all that you can be. You changing you has an impact on the rest of the world. The tragedy of life is not found in failure, but in complacency. Not in doing too much, but doing too little. Not in you living above your means, but below your capacity. It's not failure, but aiming too low that is life's greatest tragedy. I hear over and over and over, we have absolutely no concept of what we're really capable of. And we're beginning to learn that, we're beginning to understand. But I don't think we really do have a good idea of what we are capable of, what wonders we could produce in our own life, and what we could contribute to the universe around us by sitting and projecting love, projecting beautiful colors into the world, projecting thoughts of peace. If we just had some peace in our world. I saw a thing the other day. It said, I'd like to watch the news one morning and it would say, the world is at peace. Wouldn't that be a wonderful experience? The fourth dimension, with the aware of the world's circumstances, but many are still casual and just waiting for change. Waiting for it to happen, waiting for whatever God's going to do or the angels are going to do. But what we don't understand in this whole process is we are supposed to be very, very active in creating change in our communities, in our homes, wherever we can work, because it is us who needs to fix the catastrophes and the chaos that we have happening around us. Those on the fourth dimension are the aware but uncommitted to being active in the change, not catalysts, just content to be. They're expecting nothing, and they are getting the same. You know people like this. I am aware. I'm aware of the problem. I see what's going on around me, and I'm just sitting back and letting things happen and not interfering, and a lot of the times just hoping that someone else is going to fix it. Someone else is going to fix the problems in your own community, whether political or economical or whatever they are, social. There's things we can do in our own town that can have an impact. But most of us are just sitting back and thinking someone else is going to take care of this. Someone else is going to create the change. And then they think, well, because I knew, then I was actually some sort of a participant in the change. And unless you're really focusing that energy and that deliberation and those intentions into that, you really are not. You are just someone who is aware. The fifth dimension are the service workers. If we could move here, as we all are, and we're striving, and in the future where more of us will find ourselves there, I'm really hoping to move and shift into that dimension of work. That all who see a brighter world, regardless of the cost. The worker, the doer who acts on behalf of the whole, does not serve self first. They are the soldiers, the warriors, sacrificers. They see change as positive, necessary, and universal. The seer of great truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is, and has surrendered fear and the limitations of the third and fourth dimension. Higher intellect they have and reasoning power. They're not emotional but logical, and understanding the solid universal principles of wisdom and knowledge that we are gaining and is being readily made available to us. Movers and shakers of the sixth dimension, the selfless self, the truly spiritual entities who came to earth specifically to bring forth this time of change, the catalysts who work in the shadows and do great deeds, the wizards, alchemists, energy experts, avatars, airbenders, shapeshifters, and shamans from another time. They control the weather even, and can be known by that. Now the seventh dimension, they're not active, only active in an entirely different way. They are the onlookers, the guides, angels, and etheric beings who are helpers, creators in their own right. Not gods, but powerful and extremely intelligent. They can see the future. They know God's plan and are committed to its fruition, not man's plan. They understand loss of old is the creation of new. And in that, I see the destruction of Ukraine as an example of that. As the old ancient buildings come down, new will arise, and it does bring in new energies. And I don't know that everything in our world has to be destroyed, but I know that the old has to pass away, and a lot of the old in us has to pass away too, including many of us as we will leave this planet. They are positioned with a fluidity of movement in the seventh dimension and the ability far above any human. They were not human, but were created as agents of change. Going further with that, they fully accept all energy as movement, a force to be conducted, altered, utilized and enhanced or increased so it too may utilize its full or realize its full potential. It is so necessary we come to understand this power. They use color, light, frequency, and vibration to alter the present circumstances, situation, and position of all things relevant. All this is performed, the old frequencies either adapt or become erratic and weak and eventually are pushed out or replaced. So eventually and essentially, at some point, fear, anxiety, and drama will become love, compassion, peace, and positivity. In other words, we will become more like them or we will perish. It's not a threat, it's just the natural process of the human experience. And as we all know, change starts with every one of us being the best that we can be in a world that seems to be at its worst. Our world is pleading with us for change. Our universe is pleading for change. As above, so below. The conflict that we see here on our planet is also evident in the universe and the multiverse around us. The conflict is waging, and I don't know exactly how to define that. I don't completely understand that. I don't know that I want to, on that level, to try to comprehend that we have multiverses and multi-gods, and the multi-gods are warring with one another just as we are within ourselves, between the conflict that we see is so apparent between light and dark. How it all capitulates and ends in the point where we have a complete and total division, that the chasm becomes so large, or somehow or another we integrate, but I don't believe we can ever integrate the light into the darkness. I don't believe light can ever tolerate the evil that exists in darkness. I don't believe that light can tolerate the pain that is inflicted by darkness, such as what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. The evil that is there, the evil that is present, brings out the rage in mankind, the things that we're capable of doing, and we have to be forced to look at the capacity of darkness and the capacity of that type of anger, animosity, lack of care, of violence, the extreme violence in our world, that we're going to have to rise above it somehow in order to ever make it stop. So whatever we can do as we work as a group within our loving hearts and the minds that we use to send out into the world, changing the intentions and growing the world into a more of a place of enlightenment, at the same time knowing we will watch the escalation of the darkness and being okay with that as part of the process. It's hard to detach. It's hard to say, I understand, because I really honestly, seeing the pain and the suffering, it's hard to understand. But I just know that we need to do everything that we can to make ourselves better and to work together to make the world a better place. And I know that we all have that same goal. It's never a problem, though, to be reminded that we can do a little bit more, just something more. If nothing more, we can do something more for the self. But just give yourself this tremendous loving compassion and understanding the pain that we are experiencing right now, the pain that we're going through, the depression possibly, the anxiety, the empathy for the things that are happening to people around us, the great suffering. We'd have to be really cold, I think, really, really cold, to not feel anything for those people that are suffering in war. So in that, be kind to yourself, do something loving and kind as you send that energy out into the world. And I just want to remind you, thank you, I love you, and I hope to see you soon. And be blessed. Goodbye.